Not really, I don't hate anybody. The Dissolved Oxygen Lab prep is due next Friday. We'll do that here, and please look up the lab prep requires materials, procedure, and then there's an extra set of procedures. I think it says testing procedure and data collection or something. You'll need basically all of that for your lab prep. This is a relatively detailed lab. If you look at the procedure, the preparation procedure, you have to like mix these different concentrations and figure out how much percentage milk is in each one. And then in the testing procedures, you got to keep all these separate times straight and like write down all the stuff, put in a table and graph. There's a lot of details in this lab. This is probably the most like laboratory lab of the year. We use like test tubes and stopwatches and corks and tube racks, and like it's a more familiar laboratory for real lab tests. It's not like an analogy for something, it's actually demonstrating the details of something. So it really helps with this lab if you guys get all the details straight and make sure you have all the procedures straight. Anybody want to talk more about the lab? Okay. Vocabulary on 8.2. Condensation nuclei are solids inside of each raindrop. The best way I have to tell you this story is to talk about rain dancing in the American desert. Yeah. So here comes my rain dance story. So in the middle of the desert, people look up and they see these giant thunderheads, and the rain won't come. And the next day, giant thunderheads form, and they're like, oh, here we go, it's going to rain! And the thunderheads just dissipate and get blown away in the wind, and there's no rain. So one day, the engines run up on top of the mesa to get closer to the clouds so that the clouds can hear them. And they start yelling at the cloud, hey cloud, why didn't you rain? And some guy says, hey wait, we can't sound greedy and start yelling at the clouds. Let's go out there and let's celebrate and show our appreciation for clouds and thank the clouds. And they get in a good mood and they start saying things that are positive and affirmative. And one of them says, hey, I'm so fired up, I'm going to sing a song. And they all start singing a song. And they're like, this song rocks. And they start dancing. Oh, wait. But that's better, so you know what time it is. Yeah, I'm a racist. Would you give a tomahawk too? That'd be great. Homeboy starts dancing. And he kicks up some dust. And of course, he's on a mesa. So any way the wind is blowing, whether the wind is coming from this direction or the wind is coming from this direction, whichever way the wind is blowing, it's going to hit the mesa and carry the dust particles up to the clouds. And the clouds will bestow rain upon the dancer. It's not a joke. It really works. No, you should remember this forever. It's for real. Because there's this funny thing about rain that condensation cannot happen in clean air. You can't make a raindrop in perfectly clean air.
You need a mesa.
You need some source of particulate. So you know another thing that you could use? I was in Yosemite National Park during one of the most vicious thunderstorms in the history of weather recording. There was in a 3-hour period, I forget the exact number, you can look this up, it's been a few summers. In a few hours period, something like 670 lightning strike fires started in the Sierras. And the next day, all but 2 had been put out by rain.
And that's from the dust.
Yeah, the ashes. Yeah. You know, like, think about what's happening. Water vapor is highly active, right? In order for the water vapor to become still and form a liquid, it needs to give away its temperature. But it also needs a way to become still. It has no place to chill out unless there's a particulate. You don't make condensation on air. You can kind of make dew, but that's not enough to rain. So to actually get like a rain droplet that will fall, you need something to start on called condensation nucleus. So like many wildfires will put themselves out because the ashes rise, or rain dances actually work sometimes, because if you have, 100% humidity and you have the right wind to provide the dust to the right altitude, if you can get dust into those clouds, then the clouds will drop their rain. You guys ever heard of seeding rain? People do this all the time. You can shoot a rocket through a cloud, and as long as the rocket is burning a fuel that makes soot, like unburned solids, then that'll cut through the rain, through the cloud. The rocket has nothing to do with it, but the fuel solids will start the rainfall. So you can seed rain. You can do that with airplanes flying through clouds or with rockets shooting through clouds, as long as the fuel becomes soot.
How dirty would that rain be?
How what?
How dirty would the rain be?
Well, I don't know. It sort of depends on what your soot is, right? One other way to think about this is all rain's a little dirty. I don't know if you've ever left the jacuzzi open during the rain, but your jacuzzi turns all green and funky because there's like spores in the raindrops. Many people will tell you that on a farm, rainwater is better than an equal volume of irrigation water, because rainwater brings biological activity from all those spores and I don't know what that is. Yeah. But there's magic in rainwater, for sure. Yeah.
If you shoot a rocket up, does that only affect like a little area, or is it actually going to make like the whole cloud strong?
So that's a really good question. I don't understand how the rest of the cloud will also precipitate. I think what happens is a lot of those rain droplets will shear in the air, and so the little droplets of water that are formed as a rain droplet is falling. Like the droplet will fall. If it gets hit by wind, that'll spread out into many other droplets. So it's like a snowball, yeah. But I'm willing to be educated on that. I'm just guessing. Yeah. No. Anybody else want to talk about condensation nuclei? Okay, yeah, Gabriel. So these terms are going to confuse a lot of you. The water table, that's the surface of the groundwater. It's the top. Groundwater itself is all water underground. And finally, aquifer is the land that holds groundwater. So there's three ways to look at it. Where you put the water is called the aquifer. Any of this water which is underground is called the generic term of groundwater. And technically, the point where the straw starts sucking water, that like the meniscus of the groundwater, that's called the water table. Underground. Because we're referring to groundwater by definition, yes. Other vocab I can help you with? Overdraft is when you take out too much groundwater. By the way, that's also the term when you take out too much money from your checking account. Like you've exceeded your supply. Can I do more vocabulary dance for you? I'll keep going with this vocab if you keep asking.
What about percolation?
Anybody know how a percolator works for coffee?
Like where to get through. So percolation is also like when you see those hoses, your gums, so make sure.
Yep.
Basically, there's holes in it, and so the water went flowing through, so like percolate on the.
Percolation is when water goes through a solid. So the most generic definition is when water is being carried through dirt by gravity. Like that coffee pot above my refrigerator, on the back side where the toast is, there's a tube and water evaporates and then hits like a shield at the top, and then from there that water will drain onto coffee grounds, and it's called percolation when the water goes through the coffee grounds. Anyone? Mueller? Yes? I'll show you in a picture. Check this out, guys. Real. Underneath the well, you can see that the water table has like a dip in it. Here's another one. I drew this earlier today too before I realized I had a slide. You put the well. And where the well sucks out water, the groundwater, like the water table has a dip. I'll come back to talk about this more in like 3 to 5 minutes, and then if I don't explain it, when you see this picture, if I don't explain it, get at me. More vocab, anyone? Last call for vocabulary. Okay. This one here is the slightly fancier version of the song they teach my daughter in kindergarten.